You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side.
God bless America. Welcome to The Ranch, everybody. The podcast that explores the people and happenings of Dry Creek Ranch, Eagle, and the greater Boise area. This is part one of a three-part series of all the candidates running to be mayor of the city of Eagle. I did offer interviews to all four candidates. The only candidate I was not able to get in here was Captain Mark. But Mayor Jason Pierce is here, Stan Ridgeway is here, as is Brad Pike. I will post these episodes 3 days apart so people have time to digest them, but I want a couple things very, very clear. First, no candidate knew what I was going to ask about. Naturally, these questions have to do with the happenings of Eagle, but no candidate knew what questions I asked the other people. And no candidate knew what the other person responded. So Brad Pike did not know what Mayor Pierce said with regard to specific questions before we started talking. I greatly appreciated the time the candidates took to come sit down in my studio and chat with me, and I hope you like the interviews as well. If you could, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Help grow the channel, help get better people on, and help just keep everybody informed. But let's get this started off. So again, part one of a three-part series, the man, the myth, the legend, Mayor Jason Pierce. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of the getting the information out through the podcast, I think, is the new way to do it, right? Not only are you getting the younger people to get involved, right? I mean, when I talk to kids groups and everything else, it's like, hey, we are the ones making the decisions the closest to your life. Right here is the city council and the mayor. Right. You know, what parks you get to enjoy, what, you know, green belts you get to enjoy, how we do programs, right? Soccer, basketball, all those different things. They're all affecting your everyday life. So many people are worried about the national level politics. And it's like, no, you have to take care of home first.
Right.
And then you move through.
Right. To that point, something that is a bummer to me, but I think an astute, a good decision for the population of Eagle. So I live in Dry Creek Ranch, obviously, and it's not part of the city of Eagle. Maybe one day, right? But, you know, if you look at the comprehensive plan, it kind of looks, you know, we'll get in there someday. But there was the Eagle Parks and Recs that both of my boys enjoyed. They did basketball in it, and I know friends that do various sports in it. And you had to make the call recently to say, hey, look, we have to give priority to Eagle residents. So if we have space, DCR folk, anyone outside of Eagle, we'd love to have you. But if we don't have space, you are not welcome. Walk me through how you got there.
Okay, so what it was we were getting complaints from our residents that the parks were way overcrowded, the parking was horrible, neighbors were complaining, we heard about some very interesting, you know, gestures being made between parents that were dropping kids off or so on and so forth. And so what we had is when I became mayor, our soccer program went from 120 kids to 720 in 3.5 years.
Wait, since 2020?
120 kids to 720. That's a big jump.
That's a big
jump. We build parks and we build trails in the city of Eagle for the, you know, population of our community. Mm-hmm. Our taxpayers are paying those dollars and everything else. They have to have first dibs of a quality program that is good. So what we did is when we did the soccer, we go, okay, I talked to our Parks and Recs folks, and they said, listen, our parks can handle probably about 500 kids without having these issues. And so we decided to cap it at 500. So what it is, you know, when soccer opens up, let's say it's a 10-week sign-up program, you know, the first 9 weeks are going to be Eagle residents only. If we get up to 475 kids signed up and we got 25 spots left, that last week we open it up to everybody. So it could be an Eagle resident that was signing up late, but they're going to go in the same line as the people who are outside. And, you know, people outside of Eagle also pay a little bit of a premium to be part of our program. They pay a little extra because, once again, they're not paying taxes to the city. Right. And so we have to do that. So that's kind of where that came from. Basketball was the same thing. We set it at a number. We said, hey, we'll open it up until we get close. And then that last week, if we have spots open, we'll open it up to everybody. So It was a tough decision. But, you know, when you've got parks that are designed for, you know, 500 kids playing soccer and you got 710, right? You got to kind of go, hey, we can't make this miserable for the residents of Eagle. We've got to make sure it's appropriate.
Right. And you have to defend the taxpayers that are putting in, right? Like if I'm maintaining a park and then people come from outside of the area and utilize that park, and then I get bumped out from using the park, or it just becomes a very intolerable situation for me when I'm trying to enjoy my recreation. I get it. And again, I was talking to a friend who was not pleased with this either. But again, thinking about it, it's like, what are you supposed to do? Right? Like you can't snap your fingers and have, twice the capacity instantaneously. These things take time. So that's kind of at the heart of what it seems to be everyone is not necessarily griping about, but everybody is jockeying for better solutions, right? The growth of this place, right? So you just said a factor of 6, right? You take 120 to 720. How else are you seeing that growth really impacting the citizens of Eagle, and how are you managing those stretches?
So, the growth of Eagle is kind of interesting. So Eagle builds less than every other city around it by a lot. But the problem is everybody comes through Eagle to do everything. Every single person that goes to recreate in this valley is coming through Eagle to get up to McCall, Garden Valley,
right.
Tamarack, those places, right?
Because they have to hit 55,
right?
No matter what, you're coming in somewhere.
Then you look at all these planned communities that the county has approved over the years, right? Dry Creek Ranch, Cartwright Ranch, Hidden Springs, Avamore, right? All these, they're all coming through us to get to these places. And so it doesn't matter a lot with the growth that we have, because like I said, it's a half of some cities and 1/8 of other cities, but everybody's coming through us anyway. So we see it. We're very transient. We have 4 highways that run through our city. So for us, it's all about making sure we grow the way we want to as the city of Eagle. But unfortunately, what it looks like to a lot of the residents of Eagle is that it's coming from the growth in Eagle, and it's really not. Where we're building 400 homes, and the next city's building 800, and the next city's building 2,200, and the next city's building 1,700, right? I mean, it's going to come around us. It's going to happen. And that, for me, is a big, reason why we really want to make sure we control as much land around us as possible, because we do it differently than anybody else. We just do. I mean, Eagle's been doing that for 30 years. That's why our property values are the highest around. That's why, the highest income per capita is in our city, and all those types of things is because of what we've created. And so I kind of equate it to why I live on 3 acres. So I live on 3 acres because I get to control where the neighbor puts their trash cans to my driveway, right? It doesn't fall over in the wind. They didn't put it right in front. The trash man didn't drop it off right. It's a ways away because I got a 3-acre space between me and my neighbor. Well, it's the same philosophy for Eagle, right? We want to be able to make sure that as much around us is done Eagle's way, because we don't want the influence of Boise's growth. We don't want the influence of Star's growth. We don't want the influence of Meridian's growth to come in on us. We want to push out as far as possible, because I believe Eagle's done it better than anywhere else over the last 25, 30 years.
Right. I've heard, and again, this is even coming from a different state. I came from California at the beginning of 22. Tons of people down in California were like, dude, Eagle, like there's something going on with Eagle. And you just mention anything about moving. I had to call a gal last year, and somebody in Oakland paying a bill, and this particular person working in Oakland actually lived in Tracy, so removed even from Oakland. And she asked for my billing address and for my credit card, and I told her, she's like, my neighbor just moved to Eagle. This is some random person with like a heating and cooling company, which was interesting. You were talking about grabbing and essentially doing like fire breaks, right? Like if you imagine the pressures coming in, you're saying, look, we got to do it Eagle's way. What does that mean in practical terms? Because I like the way it sounds, but what does that actually mean?
Yep. It means lower density. It means high quality designs, right? It means, getting developers to put in the parks and the trails. I mean, if you look at the trails that we're putting in Eagle, and the green belt, I mean, we have a little bit of everything. We've got the foothills, we've got the river, we've got everything that people want, and it's all in one spot. And so we take advantage of all those things and make sure it's done Eagle's way. We really focus on our businesses, the mom and pops, right? If you look at Eagle, a lot of the big box stuff is all on the outskirts. So you got Home Depot and Winco on the outskirt. You got Fred Meyer up at Linder and Chinden. That's actually in the city of Eagle, right? That's on the outskirts. We put the big stuff around the outskirts, right? So we get the rooftops from the folks coming from, the higher densities of Meridian, Star, and Boise. And our residents can go out to it instead of bringing all those people into our community more so than we already get from, like I said, all the recreation traffic that comes through us. And even those that, West Boise going up to the village, right? The Star people going to Boise for work or going up to the village, they're all coming through us.
Right. Okay. 2 businesses in particular that I care dearly about. One is Costco, and 2, In-N-Out Burger. Mm-hmm. Both Eagles said no to. And In-N-Out was just like, oh, we were so close.
Well, we didn't say no to them.
Sure.
Okay. So we never say no to anybody. So
okay, great.
Costco is not even, that I know of, has talked to us. Okay. But In-N-Out Burger, there's a couple things. You have got to have an In-N-Out Burger in the right spot.
Right.
Okay. And there's 2 things that we're going to talk about. In-N-Out Burger. Okay. Every fast food place that come to us, and even the Albertsons came to us and said, we don't build it that way. We do it our way and only our way. And we say, no, you're going to design it the way it's going to fit into Eagle.
Wait, what does that even mean? Like, we don't build, like, what does Albertsons care? Every Albertsons I've ever seen is just a box.
So the Albertsons in Eagle was the first ever one built of its kind that looked different than the others. The different colors, the different architecture, the different rock, and they ended up using that throughout the country, but we were the first. The McDonald's in Eagle, we got a huge fight about the McDonald's in Eagle, and they did not want to do it. And we said, no, listen, if you want to be an Eagle, you're going to do it our way. We don't give in on design. That is why Eagle looks the way it does. That is why it is so nice. So, we have had, In-N-Out little talks where they've said, hey, we're going to do it this way. And we go, well, no, you need to have it style a little bit like Eagle. And we've seen you do it throughout the country. I mean, like Southern California, they had one in Placentia that was done totally different than others, right? And so but we also have to make sure it's in the right spot, right? You know how In-N-Outs are. We can't put it in a location that has one entrance and exit.
Right.
It just isn't going to work.
You got to be ready for traffic until 1 a.m.
Exactly.
Right.
And the thing is that I'll be honest with you. I don't think the Eagle people want to have the first In-N-Out or the second or the third, even in Eagle. We need to be like the 5th, 6th, or 7th. Because what's going to happen is if we were the first, second, or third, you're going to have everybody coming from Caldwell, Nampa, Emmett, Boise, Meridian. They're all going to be coming into Eagle. Eagle people like their peace. They like their space. They like their, right? And so we want them here at some point, but it needs to be the right time and the right place. And I'll tell you, I have never, ever told a business no. I have told them that, hey, I'm not sure if you'll get support for this. I'm not sure, if this is the right spot. Because remember, I don't make the decisions. The council does. I'm the CEO. I just make sure that they get implemented. They're the board. They're the ones that make the ultimate decision. And so I never tell someone no. I say, hey, here's what I think. I go, but you're more than capable to go to the council and see if you can, convince them that it's the right thing to do. But I'm always honest with businesses and developers and everybody up front, because I don't want to see anybody waste their time and money and then get told no. That doesn't do anybody any good, right? For In-N-Out, it could be, well, it costs us an extra $100,000 if you say no the first time and decide a couple years later it's okay. Well, I'd rather they put it into the design of the building and make it look better and more of how Eagle wants to see something.
Right.
I know you're going to see the red palm trees and a white building, but it's got to have some other, stuff to it that just isn't that,
Right. Look, Starbucks still has the green mermaid lady, right? Like you're gonna have some key features of the actual business, but I hear what you're saying that, hey, look, ultimately you're gonna have to give a little bit on the design, right? Because if you want us to participate with you as partners in this, which is what the businesses in the city would be, partners in it, you got to work. You both people have to win. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'll tell you just a little story. So
yeah, please.
The whole time my kids have been young, one of the best trips we ever take, we would do it about once every couple months, is we would hop in the car on Saturday morning. We would drive down to Ogden, Utah, which was the closest In-N-Out Burger. We'd get lunch at In-N-Out Burger. We would go stay at the local Hilton Garden Inn, and we would see a movie. We'd wake up the next morning on Sunday, have In-N-Out Burger again, and then we'd drive back. And we've been doing that for years. My kids are 26 and 24, and once in a while we still do it now, where they jump in the car and we do it.
The nearest In-N-Out burger.
Nobody loves In-N-Out Burger more than I do.
Dude, it's great. I mean, it's all right though. It's better for my waistline. So, talking about, the Eagle residents don't want to be the first, second, or third In-N-Out, because the bottom line is you don't want to draw too much additional traffic in, which makes sense, right? Like you want people to have, their pressure relief valve for In-N-Out somewhere else. Fine. But how much of that sentiment, which is, hey, I want to remain not sleepy, that's the wrong word, but we want to remain small and as little traffic as possible, we'll have to shift as we grow and the needs of revenue for the city also increase. Because as you pointed out, Eagle does not have an enormous population boom from housing, right? Like you don't allow 2 or 3 or 4,000 building permits per year. Eagle does, I think, around 300 on average. Mm-hmm. So as such, with a growing population, we need more tax revenue. Am I getting this? I mean, or do you think that the revenue you have is sufficient?
Well, so
you're going to have to forgive me if I say we. No, I tell people I live right next to Eagle.
I know. Okay. Everybody does. I get that a lot. I get a lot of people that say, I don't live in Eagle, but I wanted to. I will someday. All that stuff. Someday. And I love that. I love that kind of mentality. I love the fact that what we've done over the last 20 years that I've been involved make people want to live here. Right.
My dad actually just recently moved from Anchorage.
Yeah.
And he adopted 7 kids after me. So my 2 youngest siblings are actually 15, and they're both going to Eagle High School, and they were going to, I believe, East High up in Anchorage. And I said, Dad, this area is really, really good. And like the schools are very strong. I was in education for about 20 years. That's all I ever did. And I said, you should really come check it out. And he did. And he moved him down, and they just couldn't be happier. I mean, it really is. What Eagle has become is just, man, it's fantastic. Anyway, I interrupted you. So how much of the desire to remain small and have a small town feel will have to wiggle as the demands for revenue increase? Or will the demands not increase in your estimation?
Well, so we've done a lot of things to kind of keep that at bay a little bit, right? So if you look at a lot of the developments that have been approved over the years, there's a lot of things, infrastructure and capital projects and stuff that are put on the onus of the developer to put in, right? Which saves us from having to add a lot of stuff from the city as a whole. So there's a lot of ways we fix it there. We do want to have more of a commercial base as we go forward, but I'm not willing to give up the issue for 20 years to cause a 100-year, 150-year problem, right? Mm-hmm. So we do want those businesses, and we encourage them. And for us, it's really about the mom and pops, right? If you look at the homegrown big businesses, you look at Pet IQ, right? That building there and everything else, right? We pushed them to come here, but they started here. They started small in a garage in Eagle and became what they became. Right, the Intuit buildings that are even down in Lakemore, right, where the hotel or the theater is and stuff. That started out as T-sheets, as a little company, once again, in the garage of someone, and it became and sold out to Intuit, right? So that's what we want to keep fostering. Cryptech, who is in Eagle and, has considered to grow and stuff. We want to try to see what can we do to keep them in town. We have this new company called, not really new, gosh, they've been around for probably about 10 years in Eagle, but they're building a $28 million new building called Money Metals Exchange in downtown Eagle, right? I mean, all these things we're encouraging those types of businesses to really come from the bottom up, create the mom and pops. The mom and pops are the, families that are living in Eagle, right? They're small business owners, right? All the money's going back in. They're donating to things. We're constantly trying to do that. We don't want the big box stuff here. If we do, it's on the outskirts, which you've seen, like I said, with the Home Depots and the Wincos and stuff like that. But we're always going to encourage the business. We have quite a few business areas. Beacon Light and 16 is slated to be a 60-acre business complex. Hill Road and 55 is slated to have a lot of commercial at it. So we have that coming up, but it's going to come with time because a lot of businesses need rooftops, and Eagle isn't adding the rooftops, and we won't. I'm telling you right now, as long as I'm mayor, our goal is to be different than everything else. I call us the gem of the Treasure Valley. Right? And we don't want to have those high densities. When you come into Eagle, you kind of feel like you're getting a big hug around you with all the berms, with all the trees. I mean, you come down Eagle Road, right? You're coming from the airport. Your first time you visited. Come down Eagle Road, you pass Chinden, and you kind of fall into Eagle, right? And you see the berms and the trees and the neighborhoods and how the commercial is. It just really, I feel it gives you a big hug and it feels like something different. You know, in Northern California, you didn't know anymore when you went from Danville to San Ramon to Dublin to Livermore, all those. In Southern California, you don't know whether you go from Yorba Linda to Fullerton to Anaheim. They all feel the same. I don't want to see that happen here. I just don't.
Yeah, you're actually not inaccurate at all. When I came up here in 2021 to check it out, because we realized, like, look, we got to get out of Northern California. I stayed at a hotel down near Target. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but coming up Eagle, right, and then obviously making a right on State. It did have a distinctly different feel, and it was later in the year, so you had a little bit of snow and stuff, and it was like, wow, this is a different spot. You're like, it's just different. Then everybody was driving the speed limit, which kind of freaked me out. I'm like, what's happening? Is there an accident around here?
Yeah. You got to slow. So I tell everybody, I said, remember why you moved here. Right. Slow down and relax.
Okay, so no, you don't want to just add 3 and 4 and 5 story spots, but we are adding Avamore and Pleasant Valley and a lot of other larger developments that are very stretched out. Right? I mean, Avamore itself is just this mass acreage. And help me understand how you guys will continue to get services to those areas and if that will affect the existing population of Eagle. Because Avamore obviously just came in. It's like, hey, you're part of the family now. Yeah. And again, you know, now they have to be taken care of as part of the family.
Yeah, so, you know, so the one is called not Pleasant Valley, it's called Spring Valley.
Excuse me.
And the new name is...
You were saying Livermore, I was like Pleasanton. You caught me on that. Yeah, Spring Valley.
And now it's actually, they've renamed it to Valnova. Mm. Okay, so once again, this goes back to the philosophy of having 3 acres, right? We now get to control what happens. Avamore was getting built, whether it came into Eagle or not, just like Dry Creek, just like Cartwright Ranch, just like Hidden Springs, right? But all those are projects that are in the county, and Eagle has no say on how things happen. We needed to have a say in how 8,500 homes over 18,000 acres was going to be built around us. Because those people aren't going to Horseshoe Bend and to Idaho City for services, right? They're coming down to Eagle. And so how do we make sure that that gets built Eagle's way? How do we make sure that they when they come to services for us, they're paying taxes? When they want to be part of our soccer program or our basketball program, right? They're paying into all those things. And then the other thing was there was no future of what Avamore was going to fully be like. The family and the developers of today have told us what they want as far as what they were going to do in the county. But it's a 50 or 60 year project as far as I'm concerned. It's going to take a long time to build out a project like Avamore. So what happens when maybe the grandkids or the kids or the great grandkids don't get the amount of money that they wanted out of it, and they want to come and go to the Boise counties and the Gem counties and even back to 80 County in those days and go, we want more. Things don't get less dense. And for us to be able to bring it in, set the densities today, to know our future was gigantic for me. It was just what we had to do. It was the right thing. It was a tough decision, but the services, you know, they have their own sewer system there. We don't have to worry about that. You know, we are making them build the water system. They're going to perfect the water. They're going to build the whole thing, and they're going to give it to us. We will maintain and take care of it with the fees that we charge the people up there to use the water. The fire, they were already in Eagle Fire District, which is not part of the city. It's a separate district and taxing area. I think you're in the Eagle Fire District also. You know, so the big thing we have to provide is police services. And, you know, we went through and talked with the sheriff's department about that and said, hey, what do you need? Remember, 2/3 of Avamore is only coming into Eagle. There's still a third. And so a third of it will still have to be policed by Ada County, just like you are and Hidden Springs and Dry Creek. And so for us, it was, okay, what do you need? Well, the police department said, hey, we need 2 extra officers to cover that so that we can make sure that we can get extra patrols up there and take care of if something happens. And so, you know, that's what the council right now and myself are working on with the sheriff's department to work through that contract and what that looks financially and how we can make it happen.
I did see something on social media saying that you had increased I think it was the police funding budget by 14%. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So the what we did is we were asked this year for the same amount of officers that we had last year The sheriff's department said, hey, it's going to cost us another $506,000. So we had a $3.7 million contract. They wanted up to 4.2 for the exact same services that we had last year. So we did bump that up. We obviously don't want to lessen services.
Sure.
We're always fighting for how do we get more?
Right.
How do we get more? You pay county taxes, which provide for service from the sheriff, but you also pay city taxes, which provide services from the city too. So how do you blend that?
Okay, so the 506, the 14% just keeps the services. That's not accounting for like a police presence increase or increase in service.
Correct.
Gotcha. So what do you think it would take to actually get more service to that area?
Yeah, so we actually, Avamore, as part of their project, right, they pitched in a bunch of money to hold us over until taxes start coming in from Avamore to pay. So I think it was about $150,000 around there. And then we are looking through our budget to find another $150, because basically you have to add 2 officers at a time. 2 officers with a vehicle is around $300,000 a year addition. And so that's what we're looking to do and make sure we do it. And through the contract negotiations, I'm sure we'll get there. We want to make sure our officers are taken care of and everything else. We don't take a lot of calls. We have a very safe community. I mean, it's amazing, they're taking 8 to 10 calls, right, in a 10-hour shift. Right. But you always want to be prepared for what could happen. And that's where, our partnership with the sheriff's department, I think, is incredibly important. Having that contract with them means that our guys are trained the same way as the sheriffs that are around. We have the same philosophies and goals. And I think to keep the community safe, that's the best way to do it.
With that, and thank you for explaining all that, because again, this seems to be one of the big growing pains of the area, which is kind of like, look, Eagle is growing about, I think it's 1,000 people per year or something like that.
Every 10 years, we average 1,000. So
okay, so the average on gotcha.
Right. So some years we grow by 50 people, and some years we grow by 2,000.
Gotcha.
But over the last 2 10-year periods, it's been about 1,000 a year.
Gotcha. And with that, people, somebody was throwing around this number of like the people have become very fixated on the ratio of officers to population. Mm-hmm. Is that a concern to you, or do you think that it's because the city is primarily safe and we're not in a very large crime-ridden area like other places? And very unfortunate, by the way, that other places have more crime, right? And you would need a larger police presence. But with safer areas, it's kind of like, look, there's not a lot of crime. So is your assessment of it more of that, hey, we have an appropriate police presence for the demand of policing that the city has? Or, yeah, look, we're growing, so we're going to increase this, but, you are looking at the ratio. Like, what is that a thing to you or not? So
the 1 per 1,000, which people talk about, is a portion of the decision making, right? Mm-hmm. You have to look at the data. You have to look at how many calls the officer's taking. What kind of calls are they, right? How much, acreage are you covering? All those different things. So there's a lot to it more than just that. And so we are looking at all those things. I ask and talk to officers, retired officers that are in this area, officers that are not in this area. Obviously our police chief, talking with the sheriff himself. I've had a great relationship with the sheriff's department over the 20 years I've been here. I've known every police chief over the years. I talk to some of our retired police chiefs. Hey, listen, here's what's going on. What's the best way to handle this? And then we have a lot of directives that come from our comprehensive plan, which is how we move our city forward. And in that process, the public gets to give input on, what we should have police-wise. We have the sheriff once again, the police chief. You're looking at statistics. And so, we're always looking to make sure that we're going to be a safe city. I mean, without your safety, right. It doesn't matter how nice the design is of Eagle. It doesn't matter any of that. You got to have a safe community. And we'll always make sure we're not behind the 8 ball on that, right? You can't. Right. We've seen, you've come from it. You've seen it. You've seen what happens. But it's the mentality of the people that you have in your community, the type of community we're building. We're not building a community where our people are usually going to be the issue. Right. It's going to be who's coming through us.
Right.
And for me, policing is another thing. It's more than just the city of Eagle. We have to be cognizant of what is going on in the county as a whole. Our county sheriff is the only elected police official. Everybody else, all the other police chiefs are appointed by a mayor. And you never know what their political beliefs will be or anything else or how they want. And they have to take directive from their boss, right? Our sheriff is elected, and he gets to make those decisions. And we've got to make sure the county as a whole is protected, because Eagle will not be able to do it on its own, financially or just physically.
Right.
So looking out for the county as a whole is what's important.
That makes a lot of sense. And I was actually just speaking with somebody yesterday about the crime in this area and relaying it to other places like Arizona or, wherever. And I'm just thinking, there's no way Eagle could become that. And again, I'm wrong, right? Absolutely.
Yep.
It absolutely could. But one of the things that made me think that initially was just kind of what you're pointing out. The population here is just different, right? Like you likely aren't going to have a lot of, smash and grab robberies from somebody living right off Floating Feather. Like, that's just not really the demographic. That's not saying it's impossible, and it's not saying you can't have that type of crime. But the population that exists here is likely not going to be the perpetrator. And that's not to say that they can't come through, right? Which is kind of one of the bigger problems with the fact that Eagle is kind of this mass transit area, right? You have people rolling through. Back California, we actually lived about 25 minutes away from Oakland, but it was like, freeway running down the center, almost exactly the same design in a valley. So, it's just this one main artery, and people just jump off the freeway, commit crime, and jump back on the freeway, and avoiding that at all costs. I mean, it's like, you can't, that's why we left. Right? I mean, you have to stay away from that. And a lot of the policies, I blame primarily the policies in place for doing that. So, of course, again, I walked myself back. It's like, well, of course this place could become that like if you don't pay attention to it.
Yeah, and so we do a lot of things on top of policing. And I remember, I've lived through it. I've seen it, right? I left 20 years ago and saw the writing on the wall back then. And I do not want it to become. And one of the reasons I got involved so much was because I wanted to see why this place was so great and continue that moving forward. But, on the policing side, that can happen. And what you end up with is us making these top 10 magazines all the time in the country. They talk about the values of the homes. They talk about the income, all that stuff. So what happens is these traveling groups, they start coming in. And you have to, like I said, that's why it needs to be a county presence as much as it does our local city, because these people aren't just hitting Eagle, right? They're hitting parts of Meridian, they're hitting parts of Nampa, Caldwell. They just know the valley has these great things, and, people could be a little asleep at the wheel. And so they take advantage of it. And so to make sure we're taking care of the Treasure Valley as a whole is huge moving forward when it comes to policing. But we also have got to make sure Eagle is pretty, good at what they're doing too.
Right. Do you anticipate a time in Eagle's future where you would start to increase the number of building permits given per year? Are you keeping them artificially low at around the 300 mark, or is that all that people are applying for? Because again, with Villanova and then obviously Avamore, I mean, these are, as you pointed out, like 40, 50, 60-year projects. But those two developments are slotted for like 15,000 homes collectively or something like that?
Well, so Valnova.
Valnova, not
right.
Villanova. God.
We'll get you there.
Get me.
It's new. So Valnova is on 6,000 acres. It is guaranteed to have 3,000 homes that they can put on there. Okay, that is all that they're guaranteed to have. In order to get more, as it goes through the process, they have to make sure they have the water. They have to make sure they have the roads. They have to make sure they've done everything they said they're going to do. And then they have to provide more open space, right? And so what they do is they cluster stuff, and then you create more open space that's left for the public as a whole, not just them, but for everybody that lives here too. And that's why it was done back in 2009 when it was approved that way, was because it had to be different, right? We couldn't just allow, hey, we're going to give you, 7,100 homes. So that's what they can get up to, is about 7,100. But they have to prove along the way that they've done what they said they're going to do. So remember, so when you say that, it's like, okay, they're only guaranteed 3,000. They have to meet all these metrics to get to the other. So
Gotcha.
I think that's important for people to realize. And then with Avamore, you got about 8,500 homes on 18,000 acres. Right? So both these projects are basically one house per 2 acres. Think about that density, right? Now, that doesn't mean the houses are all on 2 acres, but it means some stuff will be clustered. You'll have some townhomes. You'll have some 2-acre lots. You'll have some 5-acre lots. You'll have some 10-acre lots. You'll have all this mixture of stuff that'll be in these communities, but the density overall will be 1 per 2. I mean, where does that happen? Where does that kind of density? It just doesn't. You don't see it anywhere. And we've done it, and the reason is because it keeps the values up. It becomes a different product. It's different than what you're going to find everywhere else. And when you talk about, the building permits, we don't keep them artificially low at all, right? One, only so many people can afford to live in the stuff we're building, right? You've got, the climate of when people come here. Some years we get 700 houses built, right? And some years we get 50. It just depends on the market and what happens. But for me, it's really about building the community we want, and capitalism will take care of the rest.
So, okay. Essentially what I was getting at is, are you helping the real estate market in Eagle and keeping the population lower by not allowing the building permits? But you're saying no. We allow as many people to apply for building permits and obviously approve them on a case-by-case basis, right? You're not just going to approve everything. But it's the density and the style that Eagle demands that artificially keeps, or let's not say artificially, but limits the number of builders and consumers and whatnot that come into the area.
Well, so it sounds like you're confusing two things. So building permits are when someone comes in and says, hey, I want to build a house.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. You're talking more about approving projects.
What I'm saying is, if you approved a project that was like a 5 or 6 story apartment complex or condo complex, right? You would probably, and that had 5,000 condos or something. You would probably get a slurry, just boom, all kinds of, because you allowed a much greater density. It's going to be a lower valued product. It's going to be, a bunch of 1 and 2 bedrooms. You're not getting, 1 for 2. All of those things, because you guys have designed the community a certain way, it necessarily limits the number of building permits that people will apply for. That's what I'm saying.
Correct. So, the type of density and the type of projects they'll bring, right, for approval, right, because the building permits don't come until. And I know I'm getting a little technical, but I want to make sure it's clear to everybody. I appreciate
what you're saying, which is essentially, look, we have a look that we're going to go for, and that look, which benefits everyone, right? Like more space. You're talking about lower density, you're grabbing more land. All of that leads to fewer people asking to build, because that's the building permit, right? They're like, hey, I would like to build this house, or coming to people with that, it reduces the number of projects that people even come with. They're like, gosh, man, to do this project, get 3 or 4 or 5,000 houses, we have to do all of this stuff. They can't just make a 3,000 unit, condo, thing, whatever.
Yeah, we have. So in Eagle, you have to go through a design review process of how things look, both commercial and residential projects. You have to go through Planning and Zoning Commission, right? So that's about 15 people that are volunteers, right, from the community. That some are experts in their field, and then some are, just residents at large, right. And then they make recommendations up to the council to help us make a decision on what's best for the community. So we do that with developments. We don't approve everything. Our comprehensive plan is what guides us. I always tell people, if you want to get involved in how Eagle's going to build in the future, you have to get involved at the comprehensive plan level. And we redo that about every 5 to 7 years. And what that does is it says, hey, here's a 40-acre lot of land. Okay, this piece can have 2 to 4 houses per acre. Okay, so then a developer comes to us and he says, hey, we're going to do a 55 and over community, and we want to do 3 homes per acre on here, and this is how we think it'll work, blah, blah, blah. And then we decide, 3 acres or 3 homes is probably too many. We'd like to see it come down a little bit, sure. Right? Or, hey, 3 is not enough on this. We'd like to see it a little more. Very rarely, if ever, does that happen in Eagle. But and so that is where you get to make those decisions on what you want to see, with input from the public, input from planning and zoning and everybody else. But remember, in Idaho, everybody has the private property rights to develop their land. The legislature has said that they have the rights to do stuff. And we set kind of a guideline with the comprehensive plan of what it will be, so that if they sell it to somebody else that decides they're going to develop it, or they decide to buy another piece of farmland for now but decide in 20 years they're going to want to do something different, they know kind of what the development abilities are on it in the future. Right. And so for us, we're really always looking at lower stuff. I mean, I can give you a couple of really cool examples. Is we had a project that was approved back in the 90s for 75 apartments at the end of Ballantyne and Old State Street, right across from the Dutch Brothers. And, during my last campaign and stuff, I really talked about lower density, owned products. We wanted to see that type of stuff in Eagle. And so the owner of that property came to me after I got elected and said, hey, you know what? I heard what you said. He He goes, we really don't want to do apartments here. What would you think if we came in with 64 townhomes? And I thought, incredible. That is great. They already had an approved project. They could have come and start pulling permits, right? And doing the project. And they wanted to make that change. That was great. Another one is up at 16 and Beacon Light. They were originally approved with 750 homes, came back and said, hey, we want to do 550 and do something different and do something like this than what was originally approved. That's great stuff, right? You're bringing those densities down. You're creating a better product. I kind of equate it to, if you think about California, Arco, right? The gas was always cheap because they just wanted people coming, right? Chevron was more of a better product, right? Sure. It was more expensive. Well, that's what we're trying to get people to understand is you might be able to build more and sell it cheaper and build more, but really that leaves you in the game longer. Why don't you build something that's higher quality, you sell for more, and then you don't have to have that extra 10 years to sell those extra 200 lots or 5 years or whatever it would take you.
Right, because you don't have to worry about economies of scale.
Exactly.
Plus, Eagle's in a unique position where you could actually sell higher-end products, right? Like some areas, not putting any of the areas down, but like some areas, if you come in with $1 million product or a community of $1 million products, it's going to be exceedingly difficult to sell those homes just because the economy's not there, the neighborhood's not there, the desirability's not there. Right. So Eagle has this really advantageous position of like, hey, you're going to people here like luxury homes, or at least bigger homes, bigger lots, things of that nature.
Well, and you also just, the community as a whole, right? We're building a different type of community. Like I said, with the parks, with the trails, with the ability to go, to the foothills, to the river. I mean, you have so much here. We're in such a great spot. And so it's just desirable. We just want to keep that moving forward. I mean, back in the day, you talk to some of the people that have lived here for 50, 60 years. Eagle was out there. Eagle was podunk. Eagle was the dumps, right? It was really, and there was a vision about 30 years ago that has been moving on over the years.
Right.
And it's just, we keep moving towards that same thing. What I love is moving here 20 years ago, right? And having that feeling and loving, oh my God, this place is amazing, right? And hearing the exact same thing from someone that moved here a week ago, right? They had that same feeling about it. And for me, sometimes it's tough because I've seen a lot of changes. There were 10,000 people when I moved here, and there's about 33,000 now, right? That's a big change. Eagle used to end at Eagle High School. That was where the city limits end. It never did. Everything else was farmland from Park Lane all the way out to Highway 16. And it's been tough to see. But you know what? I go back to some of those other places or look around this country and then come back here when I go on vacation. I can't wait to be back here. This is like, I mean, I always say that God broke the mold when they made Idaho, let alone Eagle.
Right. My dad's still, he's a physician, and he still goes up and works periodically about once a month up in Alaska. And he tells me every single time he has to go, he's like, I don't want to leave. Like, I just do. And he's lived there for 25 years. He raised children there, the whole bit, right? And he's lived a giant portion of his life. And just living here for a brief period of time is like, man, this is it's a different spot. With all of the projects and growth, there has to be a degree of kind of like NIMBY floating in, like existing residents being resistant to additional developments. That could be housing, it could be parks, for instance. Somebody was telling me about West Park and saying, look, one of the big objections to West Park, which was over near Eagle Middle School, is that the neighbors just didn't want a 30-plus acre park right in their backyard. You have enhanced crime, you have street traffic, you have all those types of things. That being said, the previous town council and mayor did purchase West Park with the intention of developing, and then you guys sold it with the intention of doing something different. Walk me through that process. What drove you to kind of do a reverse on West Park and elect for a different, facility elsewhere, like the sports park, obviously, and the gun range that will soon be there and whatever. But again, what made the West Park one of those things where you're like, this is an irredeemable project, we have to get out of it?
Yeah. So, my vision for Eagle is long-term, and it's really thinking about the broadness of what we can do, the things that we've done over time and everything else. And so when I ran, I actually talked about a lot about the fact that we needed to sell West Park, right? It was going to be put in an area where there's a lot of 1 acre and 2 acre lots. those people don't buy 1 and 2 acre lots to bring 2,000 people a day to their area. They just don't.
That's a very fair point.
So imagine owning a 1 acre lot with a 3-rail white fence backing up to a dog park where there'll be 100 dogs a day barking and jumping and, neighbors talking to. I mean, you just don't want that, right? And then the ball fields, right? Ball fields, when you bring those, you need to have adequate parking. You don't want people parking in your neighborhoods and walking around your yards and everything else. It just was not the right spot. Floating Feather is already a disaster with the middle school and the high school, right? I mean, it can be so bad at times. I mean, a lot of times it's not bad at all. I live right on Floating Feather. But at other times, during those peak times when you're going to be doing baseball and all those things, it's going to be just make it worse. It just didn't make sense. And then the other thing is, if you look at where our parks are, once again, just like our big box stores, are on the outskirts. And we do it for a reason, because we don't get to wear bracelets in Eagle that say you can't come to the park unless you live in Eagle. Right? So bringing people into our community from outside is not the best. I, once again, have that philosophy of we will go out to our outskirts as Eagle residences to do things instead of bringing more people into the middle. And so it just didn't make sense. So that was one of the reasons that we decided to sell it. We bought that for $2.5 million. We sold it for 9.1. It had very strict guidelines in the comprehensive plan of how it had to be developed. It had, 2 units per acre, and it would go from, a third of an acre lots to 1 acre lots. So they backed up and matched what was around it. And so it wasn't up to a lot of interpretation. So it made sense to sell it. A developer bought it. Nothing still has been done with it to this day. But then we went and took that money, and instead of a 35-acre park, we are now working on a 95-acre regional park for about the same amount of money with the infrastructure that we would have had to put into that park before we even started breaking ground. And so those are just smart business deals, right? I mean, if you can sell 35 acres, get 85, and still have $6.7 million in the bank, you're probably doing a pretty good job.
I mean, I like that. Just personally, I would not mind going from 2 to whatever. Yeah. I'd like the 2 in the first place, but that's okay. So talk to me about the development of the next park then. And I have a couple friends that are very big firearm enthusiasts. They have large collections. They go to indoor shooting ranges, and they were very concerned about the Eagle shooting range, the outdoor park that you guys are developing, and saying that, okay, Eagle is saying that this is the only outdoor shooting range they're going to have. And again, I am not a big, government warrior in general, but they were saying, look, they're going to track you with a credit card. This is the only one that the entire city is going to have. There's going to be no competition. And why is the city running this gun range? And I'm like, listen, Chris, I have no idea. I don't know these things. But help me understand that.
Yeah. So you're talking about the shooting sports.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah. Right. Why don't we talk about that, and then you can tell me about the development of the other one.
Yeah. So the shooting sports park was just really big. We have a lot of BLM land in our city.
Yes.
And as more growth happens around the valley, that BLM is going to probably the feds will at some point decide to take shooting off of it. The feds at any point could take shooting off of that land. It's in their hands. There's nothing we can do to make sure that
so they could come in there and unilaterally just say no one can
shoot on this federal property, right? And so for us, it was important that we had a place for people to go shoot, right? We're 2A sanctuary city, right? A lot of people carry. We want to make sure people have safe places to go train. Getting out to Blacks Creek and out in that area is difficult. It's a long ways away. Gem County is, they restrict their license or their access to it, to people that live up in that area. So we really wanted to make sure we had a spot here in Eagle, and it was important to us. We don't have to make money on our parks, right? And so that having a shooting sports park just to us made sense. We don't want to track anybody for doing anything other than you have you've paid your annual due to belong to it or whatever. But the other point thing that's really cool about it is it'll have archery. So it'll have static archery along with 3D archery. So you can go up there and walk through the foothills and shoot, fake deer and bears and all those things to practice when you're getting ready for archery season. We're going to have about 12 bays of pistol and rifle ranges from 10 yards to 200 yards. We're going to have 3 different shotgun shooting areas that you can have. And then we also have a law enforcement component to it that we want to put the land aside so that if the Ada County Sheriff's Department, Meridian Police, Garden City Police, if they want to build their own range, that they would have the ability to do that and then lease the space from us, because right now they're driving out to the Parma and Blacks Creek and all these other places to train and to have something a lot closer. And
that's great. So the idea would be to set it aside and then say, hey guys, if you're interested, you can build something here if you want, and then you can lease it back, and that way you have a closer access to training.
Right, and they have their own, right? So a lot of thing is with the other shooting ranges, they have to, find time that it's available for them to use. And, there's nothing like having a well-trained, right, law enforcement in your community as a whole. I mean, it's huge. Right. It's so big for them. So for us, being the government, it wasn't that big of a thought on that part. I understand people, like to go, and they can still go shoot on BLM. We'll never want to stop them from being able to do that, really. But we think that having a safe place where we can have range officers that can train people. There's so many people that are moving here that have never owned a gun. And if now they're in Idaho, they think they need to have a gun.
Sure.
And they need to be well trained. They need to be able to go out for that first time and talk to somebody about how they do it safely. And if we can provide that, it's another park, right? We do parks for soccer. We do parks for, playing in the water. We do parks for, baseball. We do all these different other things. A shooting sports park made sense for Idaho too. I mean, it's one of the great things we love to do.
Right. And it's very cool that you have archery as well, because that's one of those things that, in my experience, has been relegated primarily to somebody who has just like a long side yard, and it's like, where do you go? Because you need space for that as well. So that makes a lot of sense. Is there a plan to mitigate, because it's not super far out, right? And obviously a lot of shooting ranges are kind of far out, open air shooting ranges, because you don't want, the sound of shotgun with your coffee in the morning. So are there plans in place to mitigate the noise impact and noise pollution to the surrounding areas?
Yeah. So we did a noise study that went through there that showed that we were below all the federal regulations of what had to be there. We're also going to put in, a sound absorbing material to collect. Another big thing with the shooting range too is all the lead will be collected, so it's not going into the ground.
That's great.
Right. It has backdrops that'll collect that. But yeah, I hate to say it, but there's about 8 neighbors probably out there that might be affected a little bit. But with the noise of planes going over, with the noise of waterfalls, with the noise of cars going up and down, it's the benefit of the community as a whole to have a shooting range in the area, in my opinion. And we've got a lot of input from folks, and a lot of people want this, and a lot of them from Eagle. And so we just think it's going to be a great addition to our community.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And speaking of great addition, talk to me about the other sports park that you guys are putting together. Just the design that you're coming up with, and how do you feel that will actually impact the services that, for instance, Eagle Rec will be able to offer? Would that increase the number for surrounding areas? Because again, you're talking about hey, yeah, we need to be Eagle focused, but we also have to consider our position in the surrounding area. And like you're saying, Cartwright Ranch, Dry Creek Ranch, there are communities developing that are coming into Eagle for services. So are you hoping that this will increase Eagle's capacity to service those people as well, or just take the pressure off of Eagle residents?
Yeah, a regional sports park, what we're able to do is we're able to recoup a lot more money with something like that by holding tournaments and by holding big activities, right, that draw in a lot of money. And it helps pay for that. It also brings people in so that they're using our shops, and they're using our restaurants, and they're using our hotels and all those different things. And so, it just made sense. So it's a 95-acre park. It's going to start off with 4 baseball fields. I'm not sure if you know much about baseball in around this area, but West Valley Little League is a program that's been around forever that had 4 fields off of what was called Duck Alley, which is off Linder. And those fields were in the county. They were owned by a church who sold the property, and then the fields subsequently went away. So we're trying to replace those. There's about 1,000 kids in the community that play in West Valley Little League, boys and girls, softball and baseball. And so it was important to have those fields back. So that'll be phase 1. Phase 2 will be another 4 fields.
I was going to say it's 8 total, right?
Yep, 8 total, which will have some bigger fields on it. Like North Star Charter has started a varsity program and doesn't have fields, so maybe they could, lease it from us and use it for their big things. Softball, I'd love to start a men's softball league in Eagle that we could play.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
that'd be great.
a lot of us that still think we can hit the ball over the
Right.
fence, so do stuff like that. And then phase 3 is flat fields. So that will be soccer, lacrosse, football, rugby, all the different sports that folks play on flat fields. It'll also have a trailhead that you can park and go into the 2,000 acres of BLM land that's up in that area. So there's a lot of neat things that'll be there. A tournament house, so that when you have these big tournaments, people check in and go to that. So it's just a lot of fun, different things right now. And that sports park, if you go up Highway 16, is where the Eagle Rodeo is temporarily, and that's in phase 3 of the park. So we've let them kind of be there for 3 to 5 years because we figure we won't be till phase 3 for about that long.
Oh, so essentially you're waiting for Eagle Rodeo to jump out.
We wouldn't have been able to get to that phase
three.
for 3 to 5 years anyway.
Gotcha.
So what we did was, because the rodeo is a circuit, so the rodeo is kind of a nonprofit that does stuff around the valley. It's not associated with Eagle City. And so we wanted to make sure that didn't disappear. And they were in a crunch last year to find a spot to go. They had been in, believe it or not, I don't know if you know, but they were behind Albertsons, right on Highway 44, where that wall is of trees that they're building the new Marriott Hotel right now. That's where they were for years, right? And then they eventually, that land sold, so they moved up to Horseshoe Bend area, just north of Avamore, and they were there for a few years, and then that kind of went away, and so now they're over where we are. But if we didn't keep that circuit in this area, it would have gone away. So we got with them and said, no, let us help wherever we can, because we cannot lose that tradition. And kind of, I mean, those are the things that bring people to this area, right? Having a rodeo named after your city and being in here, it's huge, and we want to keep that moving forward.
Yeah, the rodeo, actually, there was some talk about, because Dry Creek Ranch put in a corral and, stables and everything, and there was some talk about the rodeo coming. And I live over near that area. And a lot of people were really flipped out. They're like, we can't have, something like this. And look, I've never put on a rodeo, so I'm not saying we could or couldn't. It's like, look, I'm sure it'd be a train wreck, whatever. Yeah. But it's also one of those things like, guys, that's awesome. Like, how wild would it be if we could watch the rodeo from our house? And I'm not saying we would love all the parking and the porta potties and all that stuff, but there is an aspect of like, this is kind of the area we live, right? Like we gotta bend a little bit. It can't be that we dictate all of this stuff or just say, hey, we don't like this aspect, we only want this aspect. So
it's 4 days, out of the year. It's one of those things that I think, like I said, brings the community together. This year I sat next to a couple. I was there every night, and one of the nights I was there, I sit next to this couple, and they're like, oh yeah, we're here from Pennsylvania. We came out to visit and check out the place. And we were staying in Meridian at one of the hotels, and we heard there was a rodeo, and we came over to it, right? They had record numbers this year. It was just an incredible time. We want to make sure we have those, right? And it causes a little bit of, issues, but it's like going to the Ford Center and, having a concert, right? It happens once a year, and it's for 4 days. And like I said, those traditions, we need to really make sure we keep around this valley.
Right. Now, speaking of traditions, Idaho has one thing that I love about it is it has a tradition of keeping government lean, right? You're in the black. You're not running some giant negative. Things are just lean. Eagle itself, though, had the city employees have increased significantly over the last couple years. Why is that? And what are the citizens of Eagle getting out of that increased employment base?
Well, you mean the actual number of
the
employees?
The actual number of employees, yeah, like in City Hall.
Well, so we've done a lot of different things. So we added a landscape department at the city because the fact that we were paying a company $400,000 a year to maintain our parks and all the stuff that we have to mow and all that and take care of trees, and we were able to do it for half that amount.
So just make an in-house department and cut the budget.
And we were able to make sure that we were able to do things when we wanted them to. When you hire a company to do something, they come and they mow on Fridays. Well, what happens when the soccer fields are growing at the big amounts during the summer or the spring, and the fields, we don't want 4-inch long grass, right, for your soccer fields. You want 3-inch or 2-inch. Well, guess what? Now our guys can go in and they can do it on Wednesdays and Saturdays, not just every Friday, right? So it was about control and about how we can make sure that we do those types of things. We bought like cleaning in-house, right? Same thing. We're spending $150,000 a year just in labor, not the materials and everything else it took. Well, heck, you can hire, 2 people that can be there all the time, and make sure things are clean, and not just at night when the cleaning crews would come in at 10 o'clock at night and be there till 3 in the morning, and then something happens in the middle of the day. Who's there to clean it up, right? So it was about efficiencies, it was about cost, and all those other things. The other things is just we've added more stuff to the community. There's more going on, right? Our parks, I'll tell you right now, I've added more people to our parks department where we actually have staff that from 6 a.m. in the morning till 6 at night is at the parks. And it's for two reasons. One, it's to make sure they're kept clean, but it's also for safety. If someone is walking around those parks with a City of Eagle shirt on, there's less chance that someone is going to try to do something. With that mom that's there with her kids, right? That she's focused on the kids and everything else. Those people can be there kind of watching out, making sure we don't have a creeper or someone that we don't want to have around. They're always paying attention to that stuff and trained to pay attention to that. And I just think it makes us a safer community. And safety's our number one thing, right?
Right.
If mom and the kids or dad and the kids can't go someplace and feel safe, all of us love being able to see the kids ride their bikes down the street without having to worry about anything.
Right.
And we want to keep that moving forward.
Right. And specifically to that point, down at Reed Merrill Park, I take my boys there fishing a bunch, and we go swimming in the river and everything. And just even seeing the volunteer patrols going up and down the greenbelt and all over it absolutely adds an air of comfort. You're kind of like, look, I mean, what are the odds that somebody's going to come around and mess when they know every couple minutes, a side-by-side drives by or a golf cart drives by? Like you're saying, it reduces the probability that somebody's going to get spicy and think that they can get away with something.
Yeah. Public safety is, once again, our number one thing. And that was adding some folks to the Public Works Department to make sure they're down at the parks. And we got guys on the trails that are taking care of things. I'm really particular about things. I like, everything to look clean. I like trash to be picked up. I like all those, and you got to have a little bit of that. And so you put the people in place to make sure that's there. We've also, with stuff, gotten a lot of volunteer groups over the last 4 years since I've been mayor to come down and pick up trash and do things, because I also believe government can't do everything for you.
Sure.
One of the great things about Idaho is we are responsible for our own actions and we take care of ourselves. So there's a lot of groups that have come together. We've got church groups and school groups and neighborhood groups and homeschool groups that come together and go pick up trash on the trails, go pick up trash along the roads. And we encourage that stuff because I tell people government can't do everything. Right. We don't want to be a nanny state. Right. And that's a lot of people that move here from California. They will come to me and they will say, why don't you guys do this? Why don't you guys do that? And I go, I'll tell you what, the best way to get this done is to pull a group of volunteers and your neighbors together and let's make it happen together.
Right.
Because if every time we add people, what it does is it just adds to the budget into your taxes. And what I can say is, we've been keeping taxes low. We've been doing good things with the money of the people that are here by creating maintenance plans and capital plans to make sure that we can take care of things in the future.
Right. You have done a lot, and you're still running for re-election, which indicates to me you see that there's more to be done. There are more, I wouldn't say necessarily problems, but there are tasks to be completed. What are those things that you would like to see finished in your next term?
Well, first of all, it's keeping the trajectory of where we're going, right? It's making sure that the community stays. I'm still going to be living here, right? And I hope that my kids and grandkids will always live here. My kids at 26 and 24 still do. And so that is a big thing. The other thing is the fact that, we've put some very good restrictions in with this capital maintenance and capital plan that we've done, where we are setting money aside to make sure we can maintain the stuff that we have, and before we start building new things, and that we can take care of new things and pay for them and not have to go to bond or take out loans or do things like that. Make sure it's all done with the money that we have. Then it is, just the fact that I love the community, and there are unfinished projects. I want to see the sports park come to fruition, right? We have a citywide fiber network that we're doing because internet is so tough to get in Eagle, and it just, a lot of people don't have good internet service. How can we do that, which will help small businesses? It'll help the mom and pops. It'll help the homeschoolers. It'll help telehealth for the future. It's just I really have this kind of 50, 60-year vision, and I want to see how much we can move forward to make it happen. And so, running for mayor is the only way that you can get things done. Now, remember, I have to get a council that sees the same vision, that sees things sometimes in a little bit different way to make sure we do it right. I don't always have all the answers. I only vote in a tie, right? So I have to make sure that the council members are actually on board with what we're doing and come up with ideas that make sense and that they want to, help support also. And so I think it's just the long-term vision. We've had so many mayors in the past that, hey, I'll do one, term. I'm in my 70s, right? I mean, you're worried about the next 5 or 6 years. I mean, I hate to say that, but I'm really looking long-term for this community over the next 50 or 60 years. Like I said, it's not just about me. It's about my kids, my grandkids, and everybody else is in the community. So I want to see those things happen, and I want to make sure Eagle continues to be the great place it was. What I really saw from the previous mayor was that we were going down the wrong path. We were if you look at a lot of things that are being built now, the large density projects on Eagle and 44 and Linder. If you look at the big projects, some of the stuff in downtown Eagle, where the higher density stuff was happening, it just wasn't where I think our community wanted to go. And unfortunately, you can't stop those because they already have approvals from previous administrations. But, you want to make sure moving forward that doesn't continue to happen.
Gotcha. Well, Mayor Pierce, thank you for coming. I've had you here for too long. I know you're a busy guy, especially with everything going on. Is there anything you would like to say in closing? And I know we've talked about a whole lot of stuff. We covered a lot of ground. Do you have anything else you'd like to kind of express?
No, I think people really need to make sure they do their homework. Don't just look at the headlines about what's going on in the community. I hold a coffee every Wednesday, Coffee with the Mayor at 9 a.m.
I've heard good things about that, by the way.
Yeah, anybody can come and ask any question, right? We don't record it because sometimes there's people in there that don't want to be seen or whatever, and but you're going to get the same answer whether you come, in January at the second week or you come in December at the first week, right? It's just for people to ask questions. There's a lot of times I tell people, listen, we're not always going to agree, but at least we both need to know where we're coming from. And for you to be able to hear it out of my mouth about what we're doing and what we're moving towards, if you like what you hear, then great. And if you don't, then tell me how we can do it different and how we can do it better. A lot of people will come with saying, hey, we don't like what well, okay, how do we fix it? We'll put a moratorium on development. You can't put a moratorium on development, right? Or, ask to do, for fees and stuff like that. Well, you are limited in what you can do with that. We don't want to be being sued by everybody in the valley, so we want to really make sure that we're doing things right and using the tax dollars properly.
Right. To that end, Twin Falls actually was, I was reading an article about it, and the mayor was saying, hey, look, bottom line is free enterprise, right? Like we can steer this as best we can, but we're not going to stop people from moving here. We don't want to stop people from moving here. We want to make sure that it's grown in a managed and appropriate way. And I read that. I was kind of like, gosh, that's a great sentiment. Free enterprise reigns, but the city obviously has the ability to guide that development, which is a big thing.
Yeah, I've always said you can't do no growth, but you can manage it. And that's what we've been doing. And like I said, the amount of things that we've been able to bring down the density on projects that were already approved have been huge. Looking forward to the type of projects that are going to be for the future, right? Somebody in 20 years is going to be sitting in this seat saying, gosh, 20 years ago they approved this, and man, thank God that they were, thinking about our future. That's what I'm hoping for.
Right, absolutely. Well, again, thank you for the time. Good luck with the campaign. Thank you for everything you've done and continue to do. Appreciate it.
We chased our pleasures here, dug our treasures there.